Good afternoon. As always, man, I'll start with a quick synopsis of our last performance before I get into this week's challenge. In looking at the game and even in feeling the game, I just feel like we're getting better in all areas, and that's a reasonable expectation and mindset to have this time of year. Our business is to win games, no doubt. You step in stadiums, you call to win. That's focus, but in the pursuit of those victories, man, you got to build, and it just feels like we're getting better. Sometimes getting better is just the coach component of it, putting plans together, putting more thorough plans together, presenting those plans with greater clarity to guys, having more depth to those plans in terms of concepts feeding off of one another, offensively, defensively, and in special teams. And then sometimes, obviously, it's the play component, the division of labor, guys comfortable with being what they're being asked to do and playing faster with better fluidity. And then lastly, sometimes it's just, in the midst of all of that in September ball, when trying to establish some of those things, then injuries occur. And so there's an adjustment that has to happen in the midst of, the gaining of the rhythm, if you will. And, we lost Deontay and Cam Hayward, and so I felt like we just were better this time around playing without those two guys. Offensively, the infusion of Calvin and others. Defensively, our ability, obviously, to stop the run and Cam's contributions there. And then what it tees up for us on the other side of that. And so, those are our impressions. We're getting better. We're better. Everyone better be getting better, regardless of the outcome of games. Obviously, you better do enough to win the games. But there's some components to the get better. The planning component, the coach component, the playing component, and then the adjustment component. We've been dealing with all of those things, and everyone does. But I just want to be really clear about just everyone's still very much in development, as are we, and I saw some signs there to build upon in the midst of earning the victory. From a health standpoint, got a couple of guys nursing some things. James Daniels is being evaluated with a groin. Allen Robinson might be limited in the early portions of the week with an ankle. Some other bumps and bruises. Got a few guys back there being looked at. But doesn't anticipate that slowing them down as we get closer to game time. Preston Harvin with a hammy. We'll see where those things kind of lead us. But as we stand here today, they're just going to limit us probably at the beginning portions of the week and be somewhat of a non-factor as we push forward toward game time. Now talking about Houston. Before I get to Houston, man, it's just a big challenge for us, man, just to stack winning road game performance on top of winning road game performance. I think if you're trying to do it in this league, you better minimize that variable. Venue, you got to smile in the face of the adversity that road venues create. You got to operate in those circumstances. We had a really nice environment in Vegas. It was almost home-like, man. Kudos to Steeler Nation. And so we're still growing in those areas, man. We might get challenged more from a hostile environmental perspective in Houston, but we might not, man. Houston, Steeler Nation might show up in Houston as well, and I'd be glad to see them if they do. But there's some growth opportunity there for us to step into another road game venue and grow in that way while we're talking about growth at the early stages of this. And then there's obviously the Texans, man. Can't say enough about D'Amico and what he's doing, the foundation that he's laying. I see it. It is tangible. They're a fundamental group. They play hard. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't kick their own butt. And they're growing every tape you put on in all three phases of the game. I'll start first with offense. Stroud's doing an awesome job, man. He looks mature beyond his years. he looks like a guy that just wore the responsibility of being a franchise quarterback at Ohio State. You know what I mean? Some programs are different than others, and you know, you do it for multiple years at a place like that, man, it's probably very similar in terms of wearing the responsibility of being a quarterback for an organization at this level. He doesn't appear to be overwhelmed by it at all. He manages himself in game and out of game with a maturity level that's impressive. He's good at extending plays. He's not just a runner when he starts to escape. His downfield vision is excellent as he extends. He's done a nice job of utilizing a bunch of eligibles and even absorbing some of that attrition component that we were talking about. Noah, number 85, was a guy for him early in the process, and you know, he got hurt, and then you saw an ascent of Dell, if you will, in terms of Stroud's attention and inclusion, and his ability to do that and display that at an early age, I think is telling. I think he's aided by their no-bones commitment to the running game and the presence that Pierce provides. Really getting familiar with him, being a young guy. I love his play demeanor and his style of running. It's really conducive to the power falling forward and staying on schedule. I think that's one of the reasons why CJ has played extremely well. They collectively do a really nice job of staying on schedule. If you remember, in talking about San Fran, we respected them in that way. Well, Coach Slowick, their offensive coordinator, comes from San Fran with D'Amico, and so you see some of those prevailing philosophies of staying on schedule and minimizing negativity because of it, in the run game component that Pierce provides them. Got a lot of nice eligibles to work with. Collins, man, is a big combat catch dude and makes those type of plays. Dell is a speedy up the field guy that's tough to manage. Robert Woods is the veteran in the group, man. Possession down target, a steady veteran presence, if you will, probably provides the same demeanor that Allen Robinson provides us in terms of his experience. Expect Tunsil to play for him this week. Man, is as good as they come, and the anchor for their group up front. And so they're new, but you see a really nice division of labor and the personality and development, and a quarterback that's displaying some maturity beyond his years and moving all in the right direction. And I think last week just kind of highlights what's been on the tape for 3 weeks anyway. And then on the defensive side, man, obviously that being D'Amico especially, man, I see some very similar things that you saw on San Francisco defensive tape. They're a fundamentalist group, not a lot of splash plays. They keep the ball in front of them. They're really tough against the run. They make you operate over the course of drives as opposed to splatterings of big plays. They communicate well. They adjust very well. I think the small menu allows those things to happen. They're not going to kick their own butts, as I mentioned. And so that's the challenge. Again, on that side, I've seen growth over the last 3 weeks on that side as well, regardless of the outcome of the games. And so although last week can be an attention grabber going on the road and handling Jacksonville the way that they did, really all the tape has our attention. I see personality, I see division of labor, I see foundational things happening, and increasingly so with each passing snap, and each passing game. And so we're prepared with an edge next week, expecting to get a good shot from them, their best in their environment, and so we got a lot of work to do. We're very much in growth and development as well, and so excited about the process that tees up the play. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Frank, what does it do for the offense, and maybe for Kenny in particular, when you have him rolling like you did the other?
That's what we desire to do anyway. Sometimes there's less of it when we're not gaining enough fluidity to put snaps together. And that's some of the diversity I think that gets lost sometimes when you're not converting third downs or you're not moving the ball. Sometimes you guys ask about snap distribution for runners, for example. Hey, can we see more of 30? Well, not if we have 15 snaps in the first 5 possessions because we're not converting third downs. It's the same thing with play concept variation. The more success you have, the more you're controlling the game scenarios, the more you're on schedule, the more possession downs you win, the more concept diversity you have, and you see pocket movement, play action, and misdirection passes, and screen game, and quick game, and all of the things that really do a good job of keeping defenses off balance. And so I know there were some questions about pocket movement and an increased usage there, but it's really just about more snaps in all of those discussions, whether it's concept variation or player usage.
Which allows you to get more into the playbook.
Exactly.
After watching,
Last week, you said that the offense, you felt like it kind of lost its mojo from the preseason. Is one game enough to say they've got it back, or is it more on track?
I'll be really transparent with you. I didn't mean it last week when I said it. You guys asked me the question repeatedly in a bunch of different ways, and I've given you the same answer. And so sometimes I just give you a colorful answer with a word like mojo, just so you guys can run with it and we all can move on with our day. The guys that know me, they know there's nothing mystical about performance. For my mentality or our mentality, we work, we improve, and then we go play. Sometimes, man, that cycle doesn't come quick enough. We got to stand in settings like this and absorb a lot of questions. They get repetitive, and so I gave you a little something. I don't subscribe to mojo or intangible like things and all of that BS. We just got to work harder. We got to put together better plans. The guys got to understand those plans and make subsequent plays. But oftentimes when I'm asked questions along those lines, those are the answers I give, and you guys keep asking the same questions, and so I just give you something like mojo so you can run with it.
You got one this week?
Depends on if these questions get repetitive.
After-
Like many guys that you use on defense, you see the communication evolving in there.
I do, and I think there's two things that are components of that. Obviously, we got a lot of guys that are new to us, and I just think with each opportunity, we get better. But also, man, talking in accuracy is a challenge. Our fans are awesome, we love it, but it creates a challenge for us as well. That's why we practice with crowd noise when we participate, when we prepare for home game weekends from a defensive perspective. And so the fact that we were on the road probably aided some of that communication as well, in terms of us being in a less hostile environment on the defensive side.
after watching the film, what did you see from Kenny this week compared to the previous two games? Was there anything he did differently?
General growth. Again, like I routinely talk about, we're putting plans together better, presenting them better. He's probably absorbing them better with more understanding and thorough understanding, and thus more fluidity in decision making and more detailed performance, whether it's accuracy or what have you. It's never exclusively him. Although I know the job, garners a certain amount of attention, we are working and improving as a collective, whether it's offense or defense or special teams.
What have you seen from Kenny Pickett in his first two starts with the Texans?
I really hadn't looked at him individually in that way, man. I'm trying to absorb their collective personality and what they're trying to get done. And so I'm not prepared to give you an accurate answer there.
As far as Jalen Warren's plays goes, over the last
I'm sorry, could you restart that?
Jalen Warren over the last 3 weeks, of course his touches, but specifically the one block he had against Crosby where Kenny went to Calvin for the touchdown. What have you seen from him the first 3 weeks?
That's really consistent with what he's done since he's been here. His blitz pickup has always been exciting and exceptional. Those of you that are in team development, training camp, and backs on backers, his very first backs on backers drill that was on display a year ago, and so that's just really consistent with what he has been.
Talking about what you did regarding the hopes to get better, to potentially expand the way. At the same time, Najee after the game spoke about simplifying the running game, having a more direct package for the running game. What's the yin and yang there as far as?
It's a delicate balance, and sometimes you can say both things and be accurate. You might want to type short yardage menu so you can block the unforeseen. You might want to be diverse in 1st and 10. And so don't read too much into it sometimes when you hear conflicting statements like that. There's a lot of layers to these discussions, to be quite honest with you. I don't know what Naj was referring to when he made that statement, but I'm just acknowledging that all of these discussions are complex.
Mike, you guys had a detour on the way back here in Kansas City. How did you spend that 8 hours downtown?
Some sleep and some working. Thankfully, because of technology, iPads and so forth, we can move on and, after I got an idea.
There were instances where Oakland, or excuse me, Vegas, looked like they were putting the 5 down linemen up front, much like Cleveland did Monday night, and you guys still ran into those fronts. How much latitude does Kenny have to make a change there?
You know, it depends on week to week. You know, why would we have Kenny do it when we know there's 5 down linemen in the game? So it's not a player decision. It's a coaching decision. You see the defensive personnel that comes onto the field as you're making calls, and so different plans week to week about whether we choose to run pass check or run check or just to run it, to be quite honest with you. But I promise you, it's not haphazard. There's always an agenda there.
Mike, Keanu Benton broke through for his first sack on Sunday. What has he been able to do to accelerate his own growth over the last few weeks?
It's not what he has done. Sometimes it's just what's happening around him. The lack of Cam Hayward has created more opportunity. With that opportunity, he's gaining experience and getting better. And so it's reasonable to expect him to get better with reps, and it's reasonable to expect him to have that mentality, to see one man's misfortune as an opportunity for growth and development and playmaking in another. And that's what team is about. You know, Deontay is missing some work right now. Boy, it is a great opportunity for a guy like Calvin Austin to show his capabilities and to show what he looks like as an every down receiver as opposed to maybe a supplementary one. And so, you know, that's what team is about. We try to educate ourselves to that fact in this game, particularly the early portions of the season when we deal with unfortunate circumstances. Obviously, our heart aches for those that miss time, but we have a certain level of excitement about the opportunity and what it means for development in the careers of those who get an opportunity to ascend.
Mike, what are the major components of the offensive line that you've seen are improving and still need to take
It's everything, to be quite honest with you. When you got new people, combination blocks and getting the feel of how you work well together. And sometimes, man, practice is game like, but it's not a game. The intensity of the penetration on double teams is different in a game setting than it is in a practice setting, for example. And so it's any and all areas, whether it's technical, whether it's communication, collective work, possession down things, and dealing with the myriad of trending structures. We see 3-by-1 defensive front structure on possession downs, for an example. Well, we've seen it on 3rd down 3 weeks in a row now. And so it's reasonable to expect us to block the concepts that come with that structure more fluidly with each passing week because of exposure. Just finished watching some Houston tape. They run 3-by-1 structure on passing down circumstances with their defensive front. So it'll be 4 weeks in a row we've seen that trending structure. And so it's reasonable to expect the collective to get better in situational ball because of repetitive trending things within the game, and it's also easy to expect individuals within it to get better in some of their one-on-one matchups because there's less questions about what's going on around them. And so I'm not, sidestepping your question. It's just a very real thing. We're getting better in all areas, individually and collectively at this stage of the journey for a lot of reasons. Experience being gained, trending things in the National Football League that you see repetitive, 3-by-1 structure or 5 down linemen or what have you. We're just getting better.
Where did you see the improvements in the run defense?
I just thought we were out of place less. And so sometimes out of place means less means, no open gaps, which was the case. Less open gaps, if you will. But also sometimes out of place means not being in position to tackle and thus creating more broken tackles. If a guy gets to where he needs to be late or is in the not the proper body position for whatever reason, those raise the potential for missed tackles. And so I just think we're moving with greater fluidity to our areas of responsibility, and we're getting there with more frequency. And so we're minimizing missed tackles and open gaps, and that's where you start.
Mike, you guys have a different schedule on Wednesday for the second week in a row. Is that because of travel the weekend before, or the schedule the weekend before, or is there something you like about the work?
Short week. We played on Monday night, so we lost Monday's tape last week. We were in Kansas City this Monday, and so we're gonna get our Monday work done. And that Monday's work is review of performance in an effort to learn, in an effort to better prepare for this next cycle. And so, you know, sometimes when you deal with short weeks later in the season, you might can the tape and move on, but not in the early stages when we're very much growing and developing like we've been talking about. And so we'll pause before we get to the Houston component of our workday Wednesday and start with a review of what we've done. Not only the accountability of play component, but the evaluation of planning, whether it's classroom planning, grass planning, how we allocate our reps, how we divide the labor up. It is a major evaluation thing of everything that we did last week in an effort to better perfect the process this week.
Mike, do you feel that the schedule switch and the emergency landing will put you at a disadvantage at all this coming weekend?
I do not at all.
Mike,
We were
because
talking about before regarding players taking advantage of the opportunity that you have guys to put down. How did Joe Ford do some of the extended snaps that he got when Levi got hurt?
And it's probably less about Levi's injury and more about us being in more advantageous down in distant circumstances too. I think Joey played 7 snaps in week 1, for example, because San Francisco didn't have a lot of third downs. They were moving it pretty good, and when they were in third down, it was 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3, things of that nature. And so Joey's getting better every week. His process is getting better every week, and so his floor is getting better in terms of his in-stadium play. Sometimes that process is aided and accelerated by guys going down, as you mentioned. But his uptick in participation probably got to do more with more advantageous third down situations than Levi's injury. I don't know that Levi missed that many reps, to be quite honest with you.
Mike, the involvement of Pat Fryermuth more in plays this week than the previous 2 weeks, is that a result of part of the preparation standpoint as far as planning, or is that more of a result of the success you guys had on offense in other areas opening up that?
Success breeds success. More snaps, more people, more concepts. Same discussion that we've been having, yes.
Mike, Will Anderson, their rookie DN, blocked a field goal this last game. Did you get to know him at all in the pre-draft process, or what have you seen from him on the tape so far?
I did get to know him. Man, love Will Anderson. Really talented guy. We go to Tuscaloosa the night before the pro day. We invite guys out to dinner. And oftentimes a guy in Will Allen's position, man, turns us down respectfully on that dinner invite. He realizes the pick that we had and where he was projected to go. Man, he came to dinner. He sat to my left. Man, we talked ball all night. Engaged, loves football. Got a desire to be great. Asked awesome questions for a guy in that position. Passionate about the game. It just showed through. So I'm not surprised with what I'm seeing from him. The guy that was sitting on the other side of me at that dinner was Brian Branch, the safety from the Detroit Lions. And if you look at the quality of his play, I'm not surprised by that. Both guys engaged, great questions, taking advantage of the opportunity to get to eat with a guy like me and extracted as much information from me as I extracted from them. And so when guys behave like that and do some of the things that he did, I'm not surprised when they're the type of players that they are. I remember years ago, Kevin Colbert and myself invited Jalen Ramsey out to dinner when we were in Tallahassee. We fully expected him to turn down our meal. He didn't. He came, he asked great questions in a very similar way, and look at how his career has turned out. And so there's talent sometimes that creates draft position. When I see passion for the game and energy for the game and intellectual development and seeking the knowledge and some of that stuff, that's the things that make freakish talent turn into freakish play. And so I'm not surprised with the success that he's having based on my experience with him or Brian Branch in Detroit for that matter.
Is there any art to what you film? I'm thinking as a pass rusher, obviously TJ's talented, but how much does it from how he watches tape and how he learns how to watch tape is how successful he's been?
Man, there's a significant difference based on football intellect and experience. Some people watch tape, some people study tape, and there's a difference. However you describe the spectrum, TJ is on the extreme end of it from a preparedness standpoint. And that's one of the reasons why you get the production that you get from him beyond his freakish talent.
Was he always like that, or is that something pros?
He was always like that in mentality. I think the level of productivity from that endeavor grows with his experience. It gets more pointed. He wastes less time. I could just tell by the dialogue that he and I have and how it has matured over the years that this process is being honed to a fine edge.
Stroud, no interceptions as a rookie so far in his first 3 games. It's not like attempts, he's at 121 attempts right, so it doesn't look like they're insulated too terribly much. He's in jump attempts. Are they trying to protect him too much? Or they let him do
They do a good job of keeping him out of adverse one-dimensional circumstances like behind the chains is a component of it. His experience beyond his years being a quarterback at Ohio State is a component of it, in my opinion. And then his mobility, his prudent use of mobility, the fact that he can extend plays and still keep his eyes downfield and still manage negativity is another component of it. So I think it's multiple things, but that's just one man's assessment from the outside.
Like, do you get the sense at all that your run game, or at least the personnel in the run game, linemen and backs, seem more well suited right now, or seem to gain greater momentum when you're running more downhill, gap focused blocking as opposed to outside zone?
There's a lot of layers to that discussion. The defensive schematics, the defensive personnel. The first couple of weeks, man, we've had some aliens on the edge, and so that might be a component of it as well, whether it's Bosa or Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, for example. And so none of those decisions happen in a vacuum.
Anyone else?
Mike, as far as preparation goes, how have you seen the relationship and the chemistry grow between your offensive coordinator and your quarterback?
In a very natural way, whether it's week in and week out this season or whether it's the totality of the 2 years that Kenny's been here.
Like he's sitting on the runway for X amount of hours. Can that galvanize the team in some way?
We're going to make it a non-issue, to be honest with you. It's in our rear view now. As I stand here today, it's a non-factor. I got so many days and hours to prepare. We have not lost any physical preparation opportunity with our football team or classroom opportunity with our football team. It created a few hours yesterday and today that our staff has to absorb from a preparation standpoint, although, as I mentioned, technology was a component of that. And so my desire is that as we move away from it, we talk less about it, because I don't want it to be an excuse in any way or some galvanizing thing in any way. No, there's nothing mystical about performance. We work, we prepare, we step in the stadiums, and we play.
Mike, has there been any change to how Matt Canada interacts and works with Kenny at this point in the season?
No.
Anyone else?
Thank you, guys.